According to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, over 580,000 individuals were homeless on a single night in 2020 in the United States. This is just a small fraction of over 1.6 billion people living in inadequate housing conditions around the world, with about 15 million forcefully evicted every year. People suffering from homelessness come from various backgrounds and includes people of all ages, genders, and race. However, despite its prevalence, common misconceptions surrounding the crisis are just as widespread. Educating the public on what homelessness is and how it should be addressed plays a significant role in providing people with the tools and resources needed to uplift others from poverty and provide them with adequate housing. However, to begin helping those suffering from homelessness, it is important to understand what homelessness is and what it isn't. Let's begin by addressing the common misconceptions surrounding homelessness and why these fallacies dehumanize the homeless population and prevent them from gaining access to vital resources.
It is important to remember that homeless people are regular people who have simply become victims of broken systemic policies that are more than often rooted in structural racism. A homeless person can be a father, a mother, brother, sister, veteran, business person, and many other things. By addressing these harmful stereotypes, we can bring an end to the harmful stigma around homelessness.
Many people assume that homeless individuals have a significant amount of control over their situation and either choose to do nothing or are happy living a nomadic lifestyle. This is a common misconception that suggests that homeless people are simply lazy or unmotivated and that they will choose to live on the streets rather than working or finding housing.
The reality is that homelessness is not a position people choose to be in, but are in because of a lack of choices. Homeless individuals are often the victims of broader systemic policies that have historic roots in contributing to chronic homelessness. This is especially true among people of color, who disproportionately experience homelessness at higher rates than white people. In fact, the National Alliance to End Homelessness notes that the most striking disparity can be found among African Americans, who represent 13% of the general population, but account for 39% of people experiencing homelessness and more than 50% of homeless families and children. This imbalance has not improved over time.
People who are experiencing homelessness are often struggling to make ends meet and can no longer afford their rent. A variety of factors can lead to homelessness, including job loss, health issues, addiction, rent increases, or many other reasons. In a report published by the National Law Center on Homelessness and Poverty, the center identified lack of affordable housing and insufficient income as a leading cause of homelessness in the United States.
However, it is also important to understand the systemic causes behind historic homelessness among marginalized groups. Racist tactics used in the past to purposely deny socioeconomic opportunities to African Americans still linger today and continue to perpetuate disparities in critical areas that impact rates of homelessness. Redlining, for example, was a form of housing discrimination used by banks to discourage economic investment in areas they deemed unsafe. However, the areas that were redlined were all in black and brown neighborhoods. The effect of historic housing discrimination can still be seen today as African Americans continue to live in disproportionately poverty-stricken neighborhoods, where they have a higher chance of being exposed to environmental toxins and less access to quality care and services. Rapid gentrification has an opposite yet equally damaging effect. Rapidly investing in a community without taking into consideration the inhabitants already living there leads to loss of affordable housing for people who cannot afford to pay higher rent prices.
In Miami, while rent prices have spiked in recent years, wages have not grown at the same pace and has created instability in the lives of people with very few options. Additionally, the stagnation of income in the state of Florida, combined with the rising prices, leaves many individuals at risk of being homeless. Moreover, the minimum wage in Florida is $10 an hour, while the average price of a rentable one-bedroom home is $1,122 a month. According to the latest report by the National Low Income Housing Coalition, if an individual in Florida is making the minimum wage, they should be able to work 86 hours a week to afford a modest one-bedroom rental home. Lack of affordable housing means that people, including children, are forced to live on the street, where they may be vulnerable to hunger, sickness, theft, assault, and other uncontrollable situations. One of the leading causes of homelessness among women is domestic violence. Victims of domestic violence can often find themselves fleeing from an abusive home with little belongings. Around 50% of all homeless women in the U.S. cite domestic violence as the immediate cause of their homelessness. Lack of adequate funding for services creates barriers between victims trying to seek help and supportive programs that help victims find and maintain affordable housing. The second myth: people experiencing homelessness all have mental health issues or abuse substances. While it is true that many people suffering from homelessness also suffer from drug or alcohol addiction or have some kind of mental illness, There are a multitude of reasons as to why individuals become homeless that aren't related to mental health or substance abuse. Research indicates that only 38% of the homeless population abuse alcohol. Many people often turn to misusing substances as a way to cope with stresses of being homeless. However, once people become dependent on alcohol to cope with their situation, it becomes more difficult to quit the abuse and seek relief and recovery. The third myth: homeless people are dangerous and violent. Numerous crime studies report that a homeless person is no more likely to commit a violent crime than a housed person is, and in fact is more likely to be the victim of violent crimes themselves. Those living on the street, for example, are more likely to become the victim of violence such as murder, assault, rape, and theft. A report published in late 2020 by NCH found that between 1999 and 2019, there were at least 1,852 reported violence attacks on homeless people. Despite this fact, many associate crime and violence with homelessness, often contributing to a culture of fear and hate towards unhoused individuals.
In Miami, homeless individuals are easy targets as they are living on the street with no protection. In early January 2023, 2 homeless people were shot and killed within a day of each other in Miami-Dade County. The fourth myth: homeless people are resistant to shelters. Many people wrongly assume that people choose to live on the street or in encampments because they refuse to accept help in the form of available services and shelters. However, we already debunked the myth that homelessness is a choice, and this myth only acts to further perpetuate a harmful stereotype. The reality is that homeless individuals face a range of barriers to accessing and utilizing available shelters and services, such as lack of transportation, fear of violence, and limited capacity of existing shelters. One of the main issues with homeless shelters is that they are often overcrowded and under-resourced, with limited space and resources to accommodate the needs of all those seeking shelter. This can result in poor living conditions, including cramped quarters, inadequate hygiene facilities, and limited access to food and other necessities. Shelters also only provide temporary relief, rather than a pathway to stable housing. While some shelters offer job training and other resources to help residents find permanent housing, the high demand for affordable housing and the lack of resources and support for homeless individuals can make it difficult for many to secure stable housing. Additionally, many shelters have strict rules and regulations that can be difficult for homeless individuals to follow, particularly those struggling with mental illness or addiction. For example, some shelters require residents to be sober or drug-free, which can be challenging for individuals who are coping with addiction or who may not have access to appropriate treatment and support. Furthermore, studies have shown that providing homeless individuals with permanent housing and support services is not only more effective in reducing homelessness, but also more cost-effective than providing emergency shelters and services.
Homelessness is a complex issue that affects millions of people around the world, yet it remains misunderstood and stigmatized. In this video, we address some of the common misconceptions surrounding homelessness, including the belief that it is a choice, that all homeless individuals are drug addicts or criminals, and that it only affects certain demographics. By dispelling these myths and raising awareness about the realities of homelessness, we can work towards removing the stigma associated with the issue and creating a society that is more compassionate and supportive towards those experiencing homelessness.
It is also important to listen to the input of those experiencing homelessness when devising effective policy solutions to homelessness. People experiencing homelessness have first-hand experience of the challenges and barriers they face, as well as the potential solutions that could be most effective in addressing their needs. By engaging with homeless individuals, policymakers and service providers can gain a better understanding of the complex factors that contribute to homelessness, including poverty, lack of affordable housing, mental health and addiction issues, and systemic oppression.
By providing access to resources such as affordable housing, mental health services, and job training programs, we can help individuals experiencing homelessness get back on their feet and lead fulfilling lives. It's time to change the way we think about homelessness and take action to address this pressing issue.